Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. Today we are talking about genealogy estate planning. So, specifically, what's going to happen to all of your genealogy research, your photographs and documents, your family artifacts, and your online account at Ancestry.com after you pass away. Now, I know nobody likes to think about their death, but certainly it's never too soon to think about it. I have a genealogy estate plan in place, and I'm not that old. And so, of course, anything can happen, and I want to be prepared for that because I have spent thousands and thousands of hours of my life and probably thousands and thousands of dollars. Researching my family history, collecting information from all over the world, inheriting things from family members. And I want to make sure that those things end up somewhere useful. Now, some of this stems from a personal experience that I had. I'll just share it with you briefly before we dive into the PowerPoint I have prepared. But my great grandmother, I knew her. She died when I was young, but I have memories of her. When she passed, her youngest daughter was still, I believe, either still living at home or had just moved out. And so went through, and she's the one who cleaned out my great grandmother's house. And so she ended up with a lot of my great grandmother's things. And a few years ago, now this great aunt of mine is getting up there in years, and a few years ago, she was cleaning out her home. I don't know if they were downsizing or what, but she came across some old family scrapbooks and some papers, and some of them were wrinkled and rolled, and she didn't know all what they were. But basically, what she did was she sent an email. Now, she has no children of her own, so she sent an email to one of my aunts, one of my dad's sisters, and she said, "I have a bunch of old family stuff that I got from mother. If nobody in the family wants it, I'm just going to throw it on the burn pile." And of course, my aunt, who I adore, she immediately said, "I will send you my UPS shipping number. Let's get that stuff to Krista as quickly as possible." And I remember opening up this box, and it wasn't just some old family papers and pictures. Inside this box were treasures, including two giant photo albums that my great grandmother had put together of her life and her travels, starting in about 1912 and going all the way up through the 1920s after my grandfather was born. And that alone was just an unbelievable treasure. Also, though, included in this stack of family papers were the original German Lutheran Church baptismal certificates for my great grandmother and all of her siblings, that included the witness signatures and actually helped us make some of the family connections that we had not yet been able to make with some of that German family in Texas and then back into Germany. And so the fact that these had almost ended up on a burn pile freaked me out to no end. And because of that, I immediately made provisions for my own genealogy estate, because I also have no children, and I want to make sure that these things don't end up being thrown away because somebody who doesn't know better is cleaning out my house if something happens to me. So that's my tale. I don't tell it to you to freak you out, but just to help you understand, like, there are a lot of people who don't care one way or the other about family history, and we do. We have been given the gift, if you will, of being the family story keepers and sometimes the family treasure keepers. But we need to make provisions for those things going forward, or they very easily could be lost to time. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start first by talking about some of those family artifacts specifically. And when I say family artifacts, I'm talking about things like military medals. So my great grandfather and my grandfather both had military medals that my grandfather inherited from his father, and then he had some of his own, and they were on display in a shadow box on the wall in my grandparents' home my whole life. That shadow box became pretty shabby and was falling apart, and And yet we always wanted to know, who's going to get this, who's going to get the medals. Of course, as children, that's fascinating to us. We heard the stories. And so one of the things that we did as a family was we took photographs of those, okay? So family medals are one kind of an artifact. Another kind of an artifact might be any kind of cookware. So my grandmother has a giant ceramic bowl that we use to make our Thanksgiving stuffing, our dressing in every year. And that bowl has so many memories for me. And my aunt and I have already discussed the pattern of inheritance for that particular bowl. We have my great-grandmother's piano. We have a doll that has been passed down. On the other side of my family, there's my grandfather's World War II military journal. There's a family Bible, right? Anything that is a physical thing that is part of your family history, okay? That's what I mean when I say family artifacts. So the first thing to do is to take photos of those things. Take a photograph of them and then record the story behind them attached to that photograph. That then becomes a piece of your family history. If you take a photograph of the shadow box of the medals, or of the stuffing bowl, or of the grand piano, or of whatever, take a photograph of that and then share that. Share that photo and that story on your online tree. Share it with your family members. Maybe print it out and share it as a family story when you're at Christmas, or give it to somebody in the family as a special birthday gift, a piece of their family heritage. All you're giving them is the photograph and the story. You're not actually giving them the artifact, okay? Then you also need to make provisions for who will get the artifact itself. And this needs to be really clearly spelled out, because for some of those artifacts, multiple people in the family could want them. And the saddest thing, it's heartbreaking to me. I think almost as heartbreaking as seeing things get lost from the family is seeing family members divided or fighting over some of those things after someone has passed. And so the best thing you can do for your family is to make clear provisions for who will get those things after you pass. Even better is to start divesting yourself of them now or at a certain point in your life. Both of my grandmothers have done this, and I'm so grateful for that. My one grandmother, when she downsized from her home into a condo in a senior living community, actually went through and inventoried everything in her home and made special note of those things that were what we would consider family artifacts. And then she let each of us as children and grandchildren let her know if there was something we were particularly interested in or felt particularly attached to. And then she went through and determined who got what. And she did that months before she moved out of her home. So then when the time came for her to move out of her home, we were all there helping her move, and we got to pack up our own special little box of treasures and take it with us. And then anything left behind went in a garage sale, and then she moved into her senior living community. She did take some treasures with her to her smaller home. And again, she made provisions for exactly what would happen to those things when she passed. My other grandmother is still living, and things like that shadow box of medals have already made their way into the hands of some of our family members. So my brother, one of my brothers, and his wife are career military, and they're both officers in the military. And shortly following September 11th, the decision was made that my brother, who actually was deployed undisclosed immediately following the events of that day, when he got back, provisions were made for him to get that shadow box of medals. My mother actually took it and had them all reset. The felt was fading and the frame was falling apart, and so she had them reset in a new shadow box as a gift for him, and he now has possession of that, and it hangs in his home. There are other things like that where they have already been given and are already being enjoyed by the children or even the grandchildren, and in some cases the great grandchildren in our family. So make provisions for those things that you consider family artifacts, especially. Now let's talk about photographs and documents. Photographs, of course, whether they are old photographs or even photographs just from your own life, those are important, and we want to make sure that they're preserved. When I say documents, what I'm talking about specifically are things like my great-grandmother's baptismal certificate from the German Lutheran Church in Texas, where she and her siblings were baptized, or things like my great-grandfather's discharge papers. He was career Army, and I have a copy of his discharge papers when he was let out of the service. Those are the kinds of documents I'm talking about, like significant life events, my parents' marriage certificate, or my original birth certificate, those kinds of things. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is to scan them now, immediately. You can purchase scanners, lots of great recommendations. There's actually several recommended for family history research that are portable and light and do a great job. Ancestry even has a program. It's called Shoebox by Ancestry. It's a free app that you can download for your iPhone or iPad, where you can just take a picture with your iPhone or your iPad of the photograph or document, and it will automatically even upload it directly to your tree for you. So it's just take the photo, and then it asks who in your tree which tree you want to attach it to, and which person in that tree you want to attach it to. So it's an immediate, very seamless process to get those photos and documents scanned and uploaded. That is the best thing you can do for preservation. Now, you then still will have family members who want some of those, and so in our family, we've scanned that great-grandmother's old photo albums. We have scanned or digitized, rather. We didn't do them ourselves. We had them done. All of my grandparents' slides, their old 35 millimeter slides from the 1940s and 50s and 60s. We've digitized all of those. We've digitized most of the photographs even from our own lives up until, digital took over the world. And we have we've put all of those things onto hard drives or discs, and we have shared those out with the family members. So my dad's siblings all have copies of, my grandparents' slides, and my mom's sister has copies of my other grandmother's photographs. And so we've got all of that stuff shared out to the family. So there are multiple copies in multiple places so that people have those and that they don't, again, get lost to time. And then you need to, again, make provisions for who gets the originals. You need to just, you have them in your possession, and you need to figure out who in your family it is that would most treasure that or most value that. And sometimes that means that you need to do a little bit of seed planting. You need to do a little bit of nurturing of the next generation of genealogists. Your spouse might not be interested. Your children might not be interested. Your grandchildren might not even be interested. But do you have a niece or nephew who has shown some interest? Or is one of your grandchildren somebody that you could talk to about some of these stories? Do they always ask about the pictures on the wall? Or, do they love going to the cemetery with you? Or, look for some of those clues and then nurture that interest in family history by sharing more information with them. And if it's very likely that you will turn them into a full-blown family historian like you have become. I am convinced that in every generation there is somebody who is the person who will keep those stories. And so our job is to just find who it is in the next generation and to nurture that in them. And so then you need to make provisions for who gets those originals. In my case, because I've inherited things from all different sides of the family, different people will likely get different things. It won't all go to one person. Now, let's talk about your family history files. This is going to be painful for some of you. Your family history files, when I'm talking about that, what I'm talking about is all of your research. I know that there are some of you who print out every single thing you come across. And some of you print out multiple copies. I work in a local family history center, and I watch people come in and they'll print out the full version of the census, and then they'll print out the index page of the census that lists all the typed out information, and then they'll print out a blown up version of the census, right? And so for every census that they find a family member in, they've got 3 pieces of paper. I know that some of you print out working family history charts, working pedigree charts, and family group sheets. And so, yes, you have that on the computer in software or in an online program. And yes, you're attaching your records and sourcing, citing your sources and keeping good electronic notes. But for whatever reason, some of you are still printing. Okay, this is the painful part. First of all, most of the printers and ink and paper that you're using to do that are not fantastic, meaning they're not going to last for a long time. I have things that I printed out 10, 12, 15 years ago that if I pick up that piece of paper today, it barely even looks like anything was printed on it. The ink has faded so badly. I have other things where I've put stacks of paper together, and when I go to look at them, because of the nature of the paper and the humidity in which I kept them in, the pages have stuck together. And so that's just not the greatest medium for long-term archival maintenance of your family history files. Not only that, not everybody's going to want all of that stuff, okay? So the first thing you need to do is you need to think about who in the family is going to get all of your original files, okay? Who is it that's going to get the notebooks or the binders or the file folders or whatever, however it is that you keep all of that paper? Who is it that's going to get that? And then maybe work with them to determine what's important, what could be digitized, what could turn out in a different format. And if you can't put it into a different format, or if nobody wants the stuff, if nobody in your family wants all your files, then you have to start thinking about what you could get rid of, okay? And so my recommendation is, and I'm not alone in this, get rid of any document copies or reprints, okay? And what I mean by that is if you've printed out the census, that census is available in a dozen places online. Do you really need a copy of that piece of paper or 3 pieces of paper that have that census information on it? Now, if we're talking about a birth certificate, then by all means, keep that copy of the birth certificate. Digitize it, attach it to your online tree, but you don't necessarily have to get rid of a birth certificate or a marriage certificate, especially if you've had to order that from somewhere and it's not available online, or if you have the original that's been handed down in your family. That then becomes almost a family document, not just a part of your family history files. So you need to clean up your family history files. That's a big thing. If nobody in your family wants them, even if somebody in your family wants them, be kind to them and clean up your family history files. Then the decision needs to be, okay, well, if nobody in your family wants those files, who gets them? And a lot of people, and I've heard them say this, say, oh, well, I'm just going to donate it to the local library, they have a genealogy room, or to the local family history center, or to the local genealogical society. And that's great, but again, if your files aren't clean, you've got lots of, reams of paper that are not necessary, then they're probably just going to set that in a box somewhere in a storage room until they clean up, and it very well could get thrown out. So there are a couple of things you can do now in order to ensure that that family history that you might donate lasts. And the first thing is you can publish a book. Now that sounds a little bit overwhelming to some of you, I know, but that's going to be the best way to preserve the information. It's also going to make sure it's maintained in some sort of an archival format. And it's going to be well organized by you rather than in file folders or in some unknown organization system to somebody else who might look at it. You do not have to publish a book about your entire family history. Pick one line. Pick one ancestor and maybe do a book about their descendants, or pick your grandfather and do a book about his ancestors as far as you have them, and then do one book for each grandparent, or however you choose to do it. Think now about ways that you could do that. Here's the thing, is that if you think ahead and you plan to publish this book, then get it done. And you'll find a few things happen. One is you end up with more focus and more direction in your own current research. The second thing is, if you've published it in preparation for donating it to a library or a genealogical society, you may very well find family members who now are interested. They weren't interested in those drawers full of papers that they didn't understand, but they're interested in a book or a well-organized binder that you've put together, if that's something that you feel you need more flexibility to do. So those are just your family history files. I know some of you are very tied to them. And I say some of you because I've gone almost entirely digital. Other than important photographs and documents that are originals, I no longer print out anything. I have a working family history chart that I slap on my wall just so that I can kind of keep track of where I am and who I'm researching. And that gets reprinted every year or two. But other than that, I'm not printing things out hardly ever anymore. And even when I do, it's simply just to work through a particular research problem or work through, keep track of things until I'm done with that segment of research, and then those things get thrown away. So figure out what's going to work for you. But again, you don't want somebody to come in after you've passed, see a room full of, your genealogy room, whatever that may be, full of stacks of paper, and just get frustrated and throw them all away because they don't understand what it is they're dealing with. Okay, finally, we're going to talk about your online account. We get lots of questions about what this means or what happens when you die. Here's kind of the lowdown. If your tree is public or if your tree is private, on the day you die, that's what it stays as, okay? So it stays, your tree doesn't go away, we don't delete it, nothing happens to your tree. It stays in the exact same iteration and with the exact same privacy settings that it had when you died. Okay, so a lot of people say, oh, well, my tree's private now because I'm working on it, but I'll make it public someday. Well, I just consider, what if someday never comes and your private tree now then is forever private, which means nobody will ever have access to the love and the care and the research and the attention that you put into that effort. So you need to make provisions. If your tree is private and you want that tree made public upon your death, you need to make provisions for that in whatever estate papers you have, okay? If your Ancestry account is on auto pay, okay, it will stay the same until it is canceled or until the bank account to which it is attached or the credit card to which it is attached is canceled. So just be aware of that as well. And again, you need to include that. And any auto subscription, I have Ancestry, I have Netflix, I have magazine subscriptions, I have all sorts of subscriptions. And I've just listed all of those in my estate papers so that if anything happens to me, somebody knows they need to go through and cancel each of these subscription services so that I don't continue to have money withdrawn while my estate is being settled. That means that you need to leave your login details somewhere with your estate papers so that the executor can deal with it. Because if somebody calls Ancestry, if they call our member services and they say, my mother passed away, she has an Ancestry account, I want to cancel that and I want to be able to get into it and make her tree public. If they do not have your login details, we will not give it to them, okay? Because anybody could call and say that, right? So they have to have your login details, or they have to provide proof of death and proof of their role as executor in order to access your account. We're not just going to give anybody access to your account, obviously for security reasons. So you need to make provisions for that to make sure that whoever it is that's dealing with your estate can cancel your auto pay and switch your tree from private to public if it's not already public, so that you can have that research out there. So that's the deal, right? That's kind of what's going to happen to your Ancestry account. I encourage you to just leave the login details with your estate papers so that the other people can access your account that way, and know that they need to access your account that way. That was a lot of information to throw at you in 25 short minutes, but hopefully it's given you some things to think about. Like I said, nobody likes to think about their own death, but the reality of the fact is that death's the only way out of life, and every one of us have to go there someday. And so, we do our best to honor all of the ancestors who have gone before us as we collect information about their lives and share their stories and keep their artifacts and their images and their memories alive. And we do a lot and spend a lot of time and energy honoring those who came before us. I would hope we would show that same respect to those who are coming after us, and just make sure that things are in order, that things are left the way we wish our mother or grandmother or great-grandmother had left them, to make them just a little bit easier on the next generation, and also to make sure that some of those treasured artifacts don't end up at a flea market or on the burn pile. That's all I have for you today. Until next time, this is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.